Hello and welcome to Bang-e-Dara. Well, today we're going to have a look at a very hot topic that is concerning the whole world. People have been talking about the Third World War, but actually we're going to talk about Russia against Ukraine. The military intervention of the Russians in Ukraine is something that people are divided on. There are people who believe Russians are right. There are people who believe no, invasion of another country cannot be right. Russians, however, do not call this an invasion. They believe this is a military operation that they're doing to liberate people in Luhansk and in Donetsk, eastern Ukraine. Well, let's have a look at a few things that we need to know about this conflict. First thing, you need to look at the things historically. Soviet Union. Well, when Russia, Ukraine, and many other countries in the region were actually one. And then in 1991, the USSR broke down, Ukraine became an independent country, and Russia too. So at the moment, what we're seeing is in 1990s, Ukraine gave up on their military weapons in exchange for the support from the Europeans and the Americans. But today we've noticed that although they're helping them monetarily or with their guns and weapons, nobody's actually coming to their rescue or help. Well, that could be really dangerous because that could trigger a multinational war, or what you call a world war. And that's something that people are now looking for. But why has Russia attacked Ukraine is a question that people are not talking about. It is because Russians have done it in self-defense. They believe that if NATO comes to Ukraine, if the Americans come to Ukraine, that would be really dangerous for them, because then Russians become the next target, and this is what Russians do not want. They want to keep NATO and the European forces or the American forces away from their borders. They've had a terrible experience in the 1940s, when in 1941, Hitler, the Nazi Germany, attacked Russia, and the Russians had to pay a very hefty price. Ukraine, by the way, was a part of the USSR at that time, was also, a country which suffered a lot. So with the Russians, they fought this war together. This was their war against the Nazi Germany. Russians fear that if the NATO comes to their borders again, and Germany, Germany, France, England, these countries are the main parts of NATO today, alongside the Americans. And the Cold War era, the relationship between Russia and the Americans haven't been great. So they do not have wonderful memories of that. So they do not want NATO at their doorstep. They've been warning Europe, they've been warning Americans to stay away from the Russian borders, but Europe and the Americans, sensing the weakness of the Russians, had been poking them regularly. So in 2014, if you remember, it's been almost 8 years when the eastern part of the Ukraine had this insurgency that started. Eventually now the Russians have interfered, and they have come in militarily to make these two places, Luhansk and Donetsk, independent republics. Well, this is what they are claiming today, Luhansk Republic and Donetsk Republic. Do you think this will happen? I personally think yes, because Russians have a history of that. They achieved their targets. They've done that with Abkhazia and Ossetia in Georgia, if you remember. And they're doing it in different parts of the world too. But how are they actually doing it? They're doing it by using force and by taking strict steps which are needed for their national security. So can you blame Russia for that? I don't think so you can, because attacking in nature is actually one way of being defensive. So I think it's really helping the Russian cause. What about the Ukrainian side now? Ukrainians have been playing in the hands of the Europeans and Americans for some time now. If you go back to their last two presidents before Mr. Zelensky, who happens to be my favorite Russian comedian, and I really love the guy as a comedian and as an actor, but as a politician I think he has united his nation, so kudos to him for that. But the things on the ground as they stand is you cannot rely on the Europeans or Americans completely when you are in trouble. So they had been playing the European game, they had been playing the American game for some time, but now all of a sudden they find themselves in hot waters. Have the Americans helped them? Definitely, in a big way. Americans have helped them in education, Americans have helped them in military, in foreign relations, in economy, everywhere. I think the Americans have really tried hard to improve Ukrainian economy. But have they come to their rescue in the time of need now, in the war? I think Ukrainians would want more from the Americans. Same is the case with NATO. You can supply them with weapons and guns and everything, but if you're not there on the ground with them, I think you've just pushed them into the war and now you're just a spectator. So this is something that is really troublesome for Ukraine. Now, my question is, what next for countries who are supported by NATO, who are supported by the Americans, against some other power, a big power? Do you think the Americans will come to their rescue if the thing reaches, or if the boiling point is reached and the war is raged? I think it'll be difficult for the Americans to do it. They do not have a history of doing that. So the countries have to think twice. Without the help of Americans, if you can stand against a big power like Russia, like China, then yes, go on, help yourself. But if you believe that you cannot fight alone against a big, mighty power like Russia, China, or any other, then you have to take your steps wisely. I believe people need to sit down and talk, because at the end of the day, communication is what solves the thing. So Ukrainians need to understand that the Americans and Germans and all those Europeans who pushed them into this war are not there with them today. They're just supporting them monetarily or with weapons, but they're not fighting with them. So it means if they wanted them in EU, they would have had them in EU. The example of Turkey is already there. Turkish people tried a lot to be in EU. They are not in EU, they've been shunned. Same is the case with Ukraine. The process has not even started. They've tried really hard, but there have been no steps in this regard. So the world needs to take notes. I think the world is watching. What do you think, the viewers of Bang-e-Dara? Can countries rely on America? Can countries rely on NATO? Can countries rely on the European countries when it comes to a military conflict with another state? I think, well, I don't think. You tell me, because whatever I say would be my opinion, but I think you've understood what I actually mean. Thank you very much, everyone. Take care of yourselves. Bye-bye.